Hey guys, how's it going? Viper here, and today I want to go over what Aaron in Discord has essentially been, leaking about the big changes that will come to Illuvium Arena's 1v1 game mode. In his words, end of the month, a few weeks, something like that. So yeah, we can probably expect end of March, maybe first week of April, something like that, for the big changes to the game mode. So this was essentially the first match that was kicking off that whole discussion, and Aaron kind of slowly revealing a little more and more after some people were coming at him with questions, right? So what did Aaron say here? Probably not going to hotfix anything since it's like since he's given an unreasonable goal to everybody in the team to just get this new game mode with the new changes and everything out as fast as possible. I really like seeing this because you essentially have the decision, okay, you can make some short-term hotfix in that sense to people unhappy right now. Okay, what if that doesn't fix this? What if there's another thing and another thing and another thing? So I think it makes a lot of sense to say, okay, we just don't dedicate resources, anything to this, because it probably takes more time than we in the public believe everything takes, right? There's usually, okay, if you want to change this, then you have to do the testing and this and the deploy and this and this and this. So takes a lot of time. I'm happy to see this. I think just getting the new thing that fixes some of the fundamental problems that have been like occurring instead of trying to just fix like some small balance adjustment or something like that at the moment. Happy to read that overall because I want to have that new thing as fast as possible. I'm okay just playing, I don't know, some different game for 2 or 3 weeks again. So what else? I know some people won't like everything, but they are pretty sure that they are going in the right direction. I mean, okay, that's like not saying much, right? Obviously, if you make something, you think you're going in the right direction, but yeah, that's cool. Probably one of the scarier things that they are doing is saying you have to own a whole line to be able to play it. Okay, it just simplifies a lot of the things regarding team builder and the nice experience, and they probably have some in-game mechanics, right? So they say you have to own an entire line of an Illuvial to bring it to play it. So we can assume something like you cannot just play the stage 3 Illuvial at the beginning. You cannot just play, I don't know, Jotun turn 1 Bond with Ranger, and that's like one of the strongest things. I guess you cannot just go, I don't know, Gyro on turn 2 or something like that. Or maybe this even means you have to play 1, level it up again, and then you can play like another 1 again, and then you can only, it takes like 5 turns to get the stage 3 and the stage 2 version of the same Illuvial in play. Something like that. I think that's good because we've seen the stacking of traits being somewhat a scary thing where, for example, you reach a critical mass of this composite. I mean, Magma used to be super good. You just play all the Magma Illuvians and you could play them really quickly, even though they're all very expensive high stage Illuvians. And the same thing that could happen with a Verdant, for example, if you play Null and Twine and Arcaleon plus the Ranger bonding, right? That's a lot of Verdant AoE healing fields. That is something that could become like a balance side issue if you can just play it for really cheap. Because Twine plus Arcaleon plus Null is 185 plus Rangers 195. You could play 4 Verdant units with the triple Verdant trait active on turn 2 in the arena right now, and it would beat a lot of teams. It would beat the Dust, Revenant, Gyro team, for example. I mean, not it would, it does. It super hardcore beats that team. Obviously has some other weaknesses to it. That's why we're not doing that. But yeah, so I think that is probably just slowing down this thing, and you have to go in a more turn-based direction where it's like, okay, my opponent played this Illuvial in that turn, so they can have this kind of restricted amount of moves next turn. So I can have more of this like turn-based input in terms of, okay, my opponent doesn't have these things available and I take my dice and it's like, what is it gonna be? Right, it's a little less that can happen per turn, which means that you can probably react to more things, and it probably slows down the game overall more compared to right now, where like 1 turn can just swing 500-600 damage, and maybe 2 turns can just deal 1000 damage. So yeah, I think it's like my prediction on that line essentially, because why else would you need the entire line of Illuvians if you want to play them in a team builder sense, right? Let's look at the next message. Yeah, regular team, people don't love the old mode, new rules make matches more dynamic, and they flow a bit better, a bit slower too. I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to in my prediction on the first comment already, that if you can't just put down the Ramfire immediately, the Jotun immediately, you can't just stack all the high stage composites like super quickly, that probably slows things down, right? And there's like more stuff that they're working on, but it won't make it into this update. So yeah, the update is just there. We can go and test it. I think that's always the risky thing to some extent if you're the game studio and you're releasing like alphas or betas or anything for people to play, right? Because people always gonna push, yo, give me this thing to play. I wanna play. And then you give it to them, and then the response is, but this is not the perfect polished product. Why did you give it to me? I want the perfect polished product, right? So yeah, it's like this. It's like this paradoxon, right? Where people say it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be perfect, just give me something to play. And once you give them something to play, the expectation is it has to be perfect. So yeah, they're gonna see how that's gonna play out here essentially. I think in the current setting, almost the majority of people that give a lot of like very vocal, aggressively phrased feedback, I wanna say, if they're just unhappy about something in the game, they just forget that part, that it is beta testing at the moment. It's not, here is the finished, polished product. So I'm gonna look forward to how it's gonna turn out with this, especially if, it's like not polished again, right? There's a lot of stuff that they want to keep doing and changing. So yeah, I'm happy that I get my hands on it and I have a game to play. I love playing Illuvium. I love playing Illuvium Arena. I've had my fair share of problems in the current patch and also with some of the current changes that were from like the initial thing in November, December last year to now in March where I'm recording this. Again, probably gonna make an entire video about that and about, just like, I don't know what happened, just explaining stuff, not really anything else than outside of that, because we get the new thing anyways. Let's keep looking at other comments. The thing that Aaron was responding here is basically when people said, give us the flow of how it's supposed to work before even giving us the thing to play. And I think Aaron's response is very much correct here, that if you just give people like a flow of like, this is how it's gonna work, if you're not like a super, like, I don't know, perfect gamer person, whatever, you don't like see through, this is the setup of this game, this is what I have to do. Like, I could do that, right? Like you can probably give me this and I can kind of see through, okay, this is how the games are gonna play out, right? But the average person, no chance, right? It's a very difficult thing. Like explain the average person the rules of TFT. Can they go and think like, okay, I'm gonna do this in these turns, this would happen, my opponent can do this, that? No, right? It's like too difficult. Just having it in your hands and being able to play it is probably just a lot better, obviously, and it's really hard to get a lot of realistic feedback from just giving you in text form, this is how the game would work, right? Now, the main thing here is, right, they're taking augments out of the team builder. The augments are no longer NFTs that we can build. Instead, augments simply are part of the game, similar to legendary augments, except you'll get a random set of 3 to choose between and have to pick one. So if you guys are familiar with Teamfight Tactics, for example, I think that was one of the first things that I thought, or like feedback-ish wise to the game, where this was like a different point though. I was like unhappy about legendary augments to some extent, or how do I put that? So currently Illuvium Arena, right, you get these super overpowered augments, legendary augments, and you can both bet on them, and then the guy that bets more coins on them gets it. And if you just bet the same thing on everything, nobody gets anything, right? I thought it would be really cool if we just would get more augments throughout the game, because then you have to adapt during the game a bit. Okay, now I got this augment, this opens up playing this different line. Now I'm not playing my exact same turn 1, 2, 3, 4 that I do in every game. I'm not doing my exact same thing, but with this augment I can play for a different win condition, or I can counter my opponent's win condition, or I can position differently and so on, right? So I always thought it's really cool if we have more access to augments throughout the game. I didn't necessarily think let's take them out of the team builder. I don't know about that part. Maybe it's cool, maybe it's not. Not sure about that. But yeah, having access to more augments throughout the game is really good, because a lot of people call TFT like a super heavy RNG game, because there's a lot of like random events happening, right? It's like, who do you fight next? What's in your next shop? What items do you get? What augments? There's a lot of like random events happening, but it is so many of them happening, the same like most card games. In a card game, a lot of random stuff happens. Like you draw cards every turn. That's the basic thing. Your opponent, you don't have full information on what is in your opponent's hand at the time. What can they do next time? What they can do next turn, I mean. So just giving more things for players to consider throughout the game is very good, because it opens up the opponent to make mistakes, essentially. That is what you want of like variance-based games, and Illuvium is 100% a variance-based game. Pretty much every strategy game to some extent is a variance-based game. And yeah, just opening up for your opponent to make mistakes, that is great, because if both players play perfect, every strategy game is... Here I have a coin. If both players play entirely perfect, I mean, what else would a game be than a coin flip, right? But if one player makes mistakes, then the other one is favored. Now, there has to be enough room in the game to make mistakes for that to matter, and you have to have impactful enough decisions, right? For example, if that is one of the criticisms in the current thing, is my opponent swapping to this team or this team? Everybody knows it's a coin flip, nothing else matters. That's bad. Like, everybody knows it, right? Everybody in like silver knows, okay, if my opponent plays Ramfire, then I have to play Dust Revenant. If my opponent plays the Verdant Jotun team, then I have to play Ramfire. And if I play Dust Revenant into Verdant Jotun, I just lose, right? Everybody is aware of these things. You don't want those things to happen. You want like, okay, I get this augment, now I have 5% more doing this decision afterwards. My opponent got this, now I have 10% more if I do this decision, stuff like that. So I'm happy about that setup. I'm looking forward to that, basically. Just breaking up this easy gameplay stuff. It's way too easy at the moment, right? Like, you can just do... you can like write down, I'm going to do this every turn, and if my opponent is playing this, then I do this. My opponent is playing this, I do this. And there's like way too few actions in that. There's like way too few decisions to be made, because the decisions are only these like super major ones of like left or right, wall off or not wall off, swap team comp or not team comp, something like that. So I'm really happy about this. Yeah. Team builder is faster since you don't have to worry about this, and the games are more dynamic since you can't pick the perfect augments. I don't know about this pick the perfect augments part. I'm like, whatever. Yeah, I don't know about that part. Like, I would not mind if there would still be augments in the team builder. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of augments that are simpler. I think the current augments are very simple. I don't know about that part. Hyper has some changes, more impactful when you get both a ramp up and a boost when you hit 100%. I like that change a lot, because I think Hyper is the one skill ceiling mechanic in the game at the moment, and every meta game where Hyper was a relevant thing, I felt like I just won every game that I played better than my opponent. And the games existed, there were few, but every now and then I felt like, well, my opponent played better than me, therefore I lost. In meta games where Hyper was relevant, like for example Magma Enchanter Mirror Match, I just felt the better player literally won every single time. Like, very, very rarely that the better player did not win in those matchups. And yeah, seeing like that Hyper on the ramp up also already matters. I like that a lot, because in some of the matchups where Hyper was like a little bit relevant, but not fully, for example in the Jotun Frost Behemoth 5 Bulwark Mirrors, where you were suiciding your Earth Illuvial so that the enemy Jotun / Ranger didn't get Hyper, and the guy that suicided the Earth Illuvials is like didn't manage to do that and had like a Nature Illuvial die first, oftentimes lost because Ranger / Jotun just got Hyper. But what also happened many times is that one player essentially played that setup better than the opponent, but at 99% of the Hyper bar being filled, that Earth Illuvial just died, and then one guy had 99% Hyper bar filled and the other guy had 0, and it just didn't matter at all. Which, therefore, that is like, eh. But yeah, seeing that change, I'm happy about that. Hyper is a super cool skill ceiling mechanic. Dominant synergy is more predictable, been simplified to later stages in the line, always have the same as stage 1. So Jotun can't be air or water anymore, it's always air, right? And Gyro and Revo cannot be earth or air, they're always air. I like that a lot as well. It just makes Hyper more impactful overall, which probably enables you that if you just have the countering element to the enemy team, you're in a more favorable position, and you cannot use composites to just make up for that weakness of your team, right? You cannot play a full air rogue team with Revo and Gyro and just make Revo and Gyro earth, so that instead of giving nature this like 10 hyper number, it only gets a 4 number, right? It's a very, very drastic difference, and yeah, I think it's just, it's good. Like, let's just leave it as that. I think it's good. It puts more emphasis on what you put into your team, and it makes it a bit more, yeah, just difficult how to have these like full neutral teams that just power level check the enemy. So you have to think more of the positioning during the fight and which units you want to die so they stop giving hyper and so on, and which units you want to be far away from something else and so on. So like anything that is about hyper and making the positioning regarding hyper like on the board matter more, I like that a lot. I think that's really, really cool, because then it's not just left or right. It's not like team comp swap or whatever. It also matters like, okay, what is this pathing? How can I do this? And so on. I like that a lot. Very, very good. I think this was just like I always feel this is a bit of a copium game developer comment. Each augment is useful, like each item is useful, each unit is useful. It's like, I don't know. It's like always, there's always gonna be, this is the best, this is like the next and the next and the next, and something at the bottom is gonna be shit. Like, sure, everything is useful. Maybe the difference is like the strongest is 100% and the weakest is 90% of that power level. Something like that, okay, sure. That's fine. It's not that big of a difference. How often has that been reality in games? I don't know. They usually have been pretty shit items all the time. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's a bit of a copium comment. If they can pull it off, I'm happy. But yeah, not sure. One of the things that needs improvement in the arena game is how similar most matches are. I think that's a good point, right? Because you kind of just have if you have a solved matchup in arena that is not evolving around hyper, it's really repetitive and really boring, because then positioning doesn't matter, right? If it's not evolving around hyper, then you have like coin, which team comp to play, which side to play, do you wall off, do you not wall off? That is like what the matchups are if they don't evolve around hyper, so they become very similar and repetitive, because there's just not too much to do, right? So yeah, that's true. He's talking about the rerolls. I assume these rerolls are for the augments that you can be offered, right, during the game and so on. Yeah, it's like, makes sense, right? That is, I don't know if that's quality of life. I would say it's more like a balance thing, where if you don't accomplish that each augment is useful by giving rerolls, you kind of bypass each augment having to be useful, because then if there's a really bad augment, you can just reroll it and fine, like you just take something else. I mean, that's what TFT does, for example, right? That's why they realized they had fucked up with their hero augment set, and they had to give 4 rerolls to the hero augments. Because if you just didn't get a good hero augment, the game kind of just ended for you there, right? That was not the intention, it was not good. So yeah, I think rerolls just like bypass balancing issues, bypass things not being as strong as other things and so on. Few people on the team that are very high level players, and even they find this much better. I mean, okay, cool. Okay, honestly, if like any other gaming studio says they have people on the team that are very high level players, I usually think it's a bit of a copium statement again, but that is like because I have an incredibly elitist take on what a high level player is, because I think of myself, like, make very successful living out of this, being like one of the best in the entire world and something. That is usually not what people refer to, right? So just, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a fair statement to be made. I've seen some people meme this on like the same basis that I just said this, with like a very elitist, insane, incredibly high, I don't know, expectations take. But I think the Illuvium team probably has a lot of good players. I think especially in the current stage and current difficulty of the game, this is not that far of a stretch to make as a comment. Learning to adapt is a skill, and it's harder to adapt if you just tunneled onto one comp. We don't want that. We want varied matches. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a copium statement again, because you can certainly just hard force stuff if you want to, and there's certainly gonna be meta games where just hard forcing one thing is just gonna be the correct thing. It's like the same, like when I read that, it's like the same copium statement people made in TFT or whatever. You can just hard force, like some meta games, it was just correct to hard force one single comp every single game. It's just the reality of it. It's just the meta game of it and the current balance. So I would say this as an overall goal, 100%. But I don't think it's achievable all the time, right? That is my take on that. Like, this as a goal, nice. Will it always be achieved? Probably not. Oh yeah, this was one of the later comments, right? Final changes about the flow of the game. You cannot just plonk down a stage 3. I think I talked about that a bit before when I said, like, on the speculating basis, even on the first message, it seems like you can't just go stage 3 Illuvium, and if you need the entire line in your team, you probably have to start playing like a small one, and then it becomes bigger or whatever. I don't know, right? I think that's the most obvious idea going into that. Not sure how they make it or how they pull it off, and mastery point costs, and I don't know, like, there's a lot of really big changes, I think, but I'm looking forward to it, because I think currently there are very, 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 very few super high impact very obvious coin flip events in the game. And when I say coin flip, sometimes it's 55-45 or 60-40, but it's a very, very high impact single or maybe 2 times a game events like that. And they just determine everything else. And like all the other small things, they don't matter a whole lot at the moment. I think it was better in like literally the first 15 weeks of this, when augments were more powerful. They could double down on playing multiple stages of the same augment in my team and so on. I think that was like a better setup on this agency side of gaming, but it wasn't better on like all these quality of life things. Like people say, well, but I play the same team all the time, and if I play versus the meta team, my off meta team is just a million times worse and can never be even close to it, right? So I think that's like fair, right? Because in Hearthstone, for example, the tier 1 deck on ladder would usually have like in high elo, like a 53, 54, incredibly high number already. 54 is super high number, win rate. And in like lower elos, maybe there's like a 58 or 60% win rate deck. That wasn't the case here, right? Like you play tier 3, in that sense, tier 3 off meta deck, you don't have 40% to win versus the best deck in the game. You had 5% or something like that. So yeah, like for that sense, on this not just better player, better deck wins aspect, but from the aspect of you can just win, you can have a better shot at winning with tier 2, with tier 3 decks and so on. It makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah, I mean, this is like the one that I don't know, when he says common dynamic pivoting is still very much possible, in some ways easier. This some ways easier is like worrying me a lot. Because the thing that I'm complaining about the most, and the thing that I have the by far most issues with, is that the current metagame is essentially you have like 8 Illuvia set up, plus 2 weapons and 1 suit maybe, so 11. And then you have another 8 Illuvia, 2 weapons, 1 suit, so like 22 plus 6 augments. Sometimes you have overlapping weapons, suit, or some units, so you can play instead of 6, 8, or 9 augments or something like that. But that is the game right now. 2 hyperpolarizing team comps with hyperpolarizing matchups, plus like a handful of augments that maybe are relevant in like the mirrors mainly, right? And then like the word pivoting, using it like it is very much, like calling that shit right now pivoting is like a bit infuriating for me. I'm not like mean about that. I'm not like trying to be mean here or anything, right? But it is a bit infuriating to me, because when we say like pivoting is like, I don't know, you play like an auto battle like TFT. What does pivoting mean? It means like you get a really good unit for one team comp in your shop, and then you decide, okay, I'm gonna like switch my strategy in like some extent. I mean, it usually means I'm just gonna play a different carry than the one I was initially wanting to. Or you just roll down all your money and you get a 2-star version of maybe the second best option that you can go right now, and you didn't get the first best option, so you play the second best option, but it's an upgraded unit, therefore it's better. So I don't, the pivoting word, I don't know, I think that's like a very copium word to be used as well most of the time, because you just do whatever is best. And just like in like a game like TFT, just being like, okay, I played this strategy and I never sell any of my units and I never buy new units. I mean, like, what are we talking? Are we talking like silver elo here or whatever? Like, who cares? And in some ways easier, because in Illuvium it was like, well, sell your entire team and buy a different team. I don't know how it can be easier than that, and that is like the worrying part for me. I really hope that you cannot just like full swap polarizing win condition, because with no downside, because that is what the game currently is. You can full swap polarizing win condition, no downside attached whatsoever. The downside previously was that you couldn't play a lot of the good augments anymore, and you would just like lose any game that goes to like turn 6 or 7 because of that. Because you just had like lower power level on the augment side, right? And I think that was a far better setup. Like the like full polarizing team comp teams before, they existed. Like when augments were more powerful and we could play multiple same augments in one team, right? You could play like a triple biogenic suppressor and so on. They existed, and the punishment was always if they didn't kill the enemy on turn 5. Turn 6 was usually like still maybe winnable, but very hard. And turn 7, they just 0% chance, right? But I think that was reasonable. Like killing turn 5 was like the aggro polarizing team goal. And if they didn't pull it off, then I think they should lose afterwards. It's like if an aggro deck in a mana-based game doesn't kill the other guy early enough, then they are supposed to lose. They're not supposed to have like a coin flip afterwards, and I lost my coin, and still win or something, right? So yeah, this comment has me a bit worried. Yeah, I just don't like single super high impact events that are very obvious, like coin flip or dice roll, like very close to that. This video got a lot longer than I thought. I thought I'm gonna go over this in like 10 minutes and just chill. Yeah, very good that I am saying I'm gonna make like a second one if you guys want that. Just trying to recap the iterations of Arena right now, what I thought was good, what I thought was bad, and like I guess balance and like the setups of augments and positioning and like mastery points per turn and like all that stuff, right? Maybe also going over some of the bugs, because some of the bugs maybe could be features in the future, right? I really like the one where you could sell a unit, play it back in the same position, and if the unit had an augment on, if like a bonded unit had an augment on it, you got 100% points refunded as well. So you could have like super cool early games with that. I think you had yeah, I really enjoyed that because every team could play super good early games because of that, and I think that made the game a lot more dynamic in that sense, because you actually played, you didn't take too much damage on either side each turn, so you actually did play towards like turn 6, 7, 8 like late game setups, and yeah, I like that. I thought that was good. And you didn't just like get run over by somebody just all in hyper polarizing early game strats, which yeah, I'm not a fan of that personally, right? Maybe some people are. It is what it is. I appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments as always, and see you in the next one.